everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us here today. My name is Melanie Stapleton, and I'm the host of The Other Side, an online talk show where creatives with disabilities can have a platform in the entertainment industry. In honor of Spinal Muscular Atrophy Awareness Month, I had the pleasure of interviewing Shay Colleen Megale, also professionally known as SC Megale. And we are partnering with a nonprofit called the Gwendolyn Strong Foundation. And we have the donation link in the chat if you all would like to donate as well. And Shay has also said that she has some links she'd like to share with us later on in the program. Shay is a screenwriter, filmmaker, and author with SMA. She is known for her novel, This Is Not a Love Scene, and her children's book series, The Marvelous Mercer. She has also been featured in prominent publications such as the USA Today, the Washington Post, NBC's Today Show, and CBS Evening News. Without further ado, please welcome Shay.
Thank you.
Hi, Shay.
Oh, amazing. Hey, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm COVID positive, actually. So I'm trying to give like a Theodore Roosevelt doing his speech after getting shot vibe today. Hope that's okay. But I'm doing all right. So
I'm sorry to hear that. I hope you feel better.
No, it's all right. I'm doing fine. It's not as bad as they say. So
okay, good to hear. So the public is not informed or educated on disabilities in general, let alone SMA. What has it been like living with spinal muscular atrophy from your personal experience?
That's a great question. You say the public is not as aware as they could be, but I'm not even as aware as I could be on SMA. I only realized that August was the awareness month a couple years ago. So you caught me on the last day. So we got it in there. That's great. Disability is experienced in many different ways. And so I always like to first say that I can't be a catch-all for all disabilities, all experiences, just my own experience. I have observed that there are two categories, in my opinion, of experiencing disability. And the first is when you're born with it, and that's what and that's the world you come into. And the second is when you have something taken away from you, like you start out able-bodied and you lose something. And so then you have to relearn all sorts of experiences. That's a very different set of experiences than I've had. Being born with spinal muscular atrophy is sort of like being an anthropologist among humanity, because you spend your life watching how life is done, how the world is done through people with normal abilities, including your family and friends. And so, in some ways, it's sort of like living amongst these people and wanting to take on their rituals and be like them, but never really feeling like you're canon human. And in some ways, that's very false too. In some ways, that's a narrative that you really need to break down, because there's no right way of having a human experience. There's no way to have an inauthentic or incomplete human experience. Whatever your experience is, that is a human experience. That's something I've been working on. But yeah, I still have that kind of anthropologist type feeling around people. So
definitely. I really liked what you said about the human experience and how it's very different for everybody. And I feel like that does come through in your writing a lot, kind of the different aspects of what it's like to live with SMA. So I really wanted to make sure we touched upon that. And you kind of also talked about how people that are disabled, it's almost like in the beginning, they think that they're losing something. But once more self-acceptance is established, then a lot of people realize that they're actually gained a new insight, new perspective. So there's definitely pros and cons. And I've also heard with SMA a lot too, is that it's because not many people are educated about it, that it's severely underfunded, and that if there's not enough funds to provide for research, then how are we going to get better treatments for potential preventions and cures? So that's something to consider as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one difficulty with getting attention towards research for SMA is that it's a disease where inches and centimeters matter, in the sense that, if I can lift my arm up about this high, but if I could lift it up about another inch, I could reach the chips, and that makes a big difference in day-to-day life. And so when you measure progress in very small increments, it's hard to get, a big bang as far as attention and research funding, as you said. But those little things really add up and make a difference. I don't like to think of myself as being, this is a recent thought I've had recently that I'm trying to like bring into my mojo. I'm trying to think of myself less as being weak and more as having a lot more weight on me than the regular person. So if someone were super muscular, but they were carrying a huge ton, carrying a piano on their back, you wouldn't call that person weak if they couldn't lift their arm, And so I'm trying to think of myself as wearing this very thick armor that other people don't necessarily have to. And that can go for, not just me, for everybody, for any listener out there who's feeling, a mental, emotional, maybe physical impairment. You're not weak. You're just carrying a very strong, very heavy suit of armor.
I love what you were saying about how it's almost like some people unfortunately have the perspective due to lack of education and ignorance that having a disability is a bad thing, when in actuality it just makes you different, makes you unique, and it's nothing, and it's something to nothing to be ashamed of at all. And I love how you have such a positive outlook on life and all the amazing things that you've been doing to help with not just the disabled community, but also for the writing community as well. So I commend you for all those amazing things. Because of your disability, physical activity was challenging for you. So you turned to writing as an outlet to express yourself. What inspires you to write about something or create a story about someone?
That's a great question. Number one, I got most of my plot ideas through dreams. So I would just, wake up and say, that was very weird, write it down and turn it into a plot. And so a lot of my stories started out first with the world and first with the story, and then I added in the characters. But as far as being inspired to write about people and to write characters, to write protagonists, in some sense you have to love people, and sometimes you have to be very afraid of people, and in some sense you have to really dislike people. You have to. It's a exercise in psychology, writing characters and writing what their motivations would be and how they would react to a certain situation. I've always had a great, very deep love for people and for humanity. And so in some sense, I like to think of my writing as a love letter to them. And in some sense, it's trying to experience them, as you were saying, since I don't have all of those experiences that people with full abilities have. It was my way of trying on those rituals, being able to live that out. Because what a lot of people don't realize is that, when you see me, you see the chair, and that's normal. And I don't put anyone down for that. We all have eyes, right? And eyes see things, and that's just a thing. But I remember there was one time I was shopping in Joanne Fabrics or something, and there's shelves that were blocking my lower body, and so my wheelchair was just kind of going along very smoothly, as a wheelchair does. And I came up to the clerk at the end of the shopping day, and she said, "Oh, I had no idea what you were. You were just like gliding around, like like a Roomba or something, vacuuming up the floor." And it took everything in me not to kind of like jump at her lapels. But not because of the insensitivity of what she said, but because in my head, I don't see myself as gliding or rolling. I see myself just as much as you, taking one step after the other, bobbing up and down, with the terrain. I see myself crossing my hands behind my back and leaving the room, rather than sitting there gliding, moving a joystick. And so that disassociation between what I see and what you see, that's one of the more difficult hurdles to overcome.
Definitely. I really thought that it was really poignant what you said before in regards to that you write to experience, not just relive your own memories, but to try to experience other people and their journeys. I feel like that's also one of the main reasons that I love writing as well, because I feel like I can almost like connect with people in a way without even having to like meet them or even like interact with them like in a physical level. It's a really magical thing. And I'm really sorry about what happened to you. It's very not a very nice thing to do, but I'm glad that it was a learning experience for the employee.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, everyone has different levels of awareness, and so I try to be very patient with that. I'm not the type to get angry over it.
Mm-hmm. So since we're on the topic of writing, what is your creative process like? And since you're a novelist and a filmmaker, does it change depending on the medium of storytelling?
My process for writing is chaos. No planning, no notes, nothing. Dive right into it, and let the emotions lead. And so that turns out very emotionalist writing, very exciting writing, but often lots of plot holes and logic that I have to go back and fix. Some people plan very well and they have no plot holes, but they can come up a little flat. So there's pros and cons of either. For me, it's the chaos, it's the emotion, it's the rawness, it's the the passion. I'm Italian, what can I say? And for film, I'm a little more careful because there's a lot of people involved. It's more of event planning, and you have to collaborate and you have to be responsible, and it's not just you and the keyboard. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of preparation that goes into filmmaking. But I have a great time because you have the thrill of being on the set and just everything happening all at once that you certainly don't get when you are, locked up in your room with coffee and keyboard and a dog sleeping next to you, that kind of thing. So very different mediums, as you said.
Yes, and I feel like there are some benefits to being a pantser because, as you were kind of alluding to, you can kind of lead more with the emotion and the action as opposed to like coming up with the structuring and the world building. So there are definitely benefits to both types and methods of writing. I also really think I don't really understand why, but I feel like a lot of people respond more to movies than to books because movies are just so visceral and visual. And even in writing, they always tell us to show and not to tell. And what
Right.
better way to show than through pictures and actors and scenes. And so, but I personally don't think you can ever beat the book, but that's just my personal opinion. Everyone has their own different opinion, but
Very nice.
yes. And then in the past, you've mentioned that every character that you create experiences an element of disability. Can you please elaborate on how you infuse parts of yourself and parts of your journey into the character?
Yeah, sure. I've had characters that are deaf. I've had characters that have had a prosthetic leg. One character, as you know, that was obviously entirely in a wheelchair, much like me, very thinly disguised. I think that to separate from disability for a second, just talk about the theory of writing.
Mhm.
Um, all good writing has elements of the author inside every character, and I've always argued that you should relate the most with your villain or with people that don't behave as morally black and white as your hero would. Um, and that's because there is no black and white. We're all varying degrees of gray. And so if you're able to relate strongly to your villain, you can make him believable. You can understand why he does things. He or she hurt begets hurt. So people hurt because they have been hurt. So you can relate to your own hurts. The times that you were wronged, the times that you suffered, and how you were tempted to turn to the wrong thing, or how you did turn to the wrong thing, and maybe course corrected and maybe didn't. But all of this is to say that whether I'm mixing disability with it or not, which, like I said, if you come right down to it, everybody is disabled in some way. So I'm always mixing disability into it. Um, but it's all for me a matter of exploring self, exploring identity. I think that there is a large tragedy of people not realizing how much that to themselves there is, and how much that they can discover about themselves, not just their name, their job, their religion, their political alignment. All of that can be shifted with a challenging experience. All of that, you're one thing until all of a sudden you're not. And you're like, how did that happen? Where did I get? How did I get to this? And so, being able to have that sense of exploration of who you are, of who you can be, of who you want to be, of who you don't want to be, for me, it's one of the great joys of writing. But yes, we are all disabled in some way, mentally, emotionally, physically, and all of my characters, whether it's visible or invisible, will exhibit that, and I'm very proud of that.
Amazing. Those are all fantastic points. As you were saying before, a disability can really be defined as a limitation. Could be anything, could be mental, physical, and all characters experience obstacles, and that could be the antagonist, that could be their circumstances, or even themselves at times too, to be honest. And I feel like putting yourself in a character really humanizes them, because when in the beginning of writing, they're really just names on a page, and you have to give them things like backstory and, like what their personality is like and what their behaviors are. So kind of making it real really grounds it for the writer as well, and for the audience too. So that's something important to
Mhm.
consider as well. You're also known for your children's book series, The Marvelous Mercer. Was that your first attempt at storytelling?
Oh no, I was in very early grade school. I was given an Alpha Smart, and I felt very cool with my Alpha Smart. I don't know if anybody remembers what those are, but just totally non-internet connected portable keyboards with a tiny little like rectangular calculator type screen. And I did all my writing and English assignments on that. And so ever since I was very young in grade school, I was writing long stories and just really trying to get creative and flowery with my language. So no, it wasn't my first attempt at storytelling. In fact, it's a very primitive attempt. I was so young. I'm so proud of how it's evolved. But it really just came from little notes that I had written down and little pictures I had drawn. And so it's a great example of how something can start very small and become something very wonderful. And I'm very proud of what we've done with the funds we've raised with that series. We used all the money to go towards research for SMA, but also raising service dogs for people who need them. And we were able to fund solely fund one service dog for a wounded veteran. That was very awesome. So I'm very proud of all that. So yes, thank you for asking about that.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Something you said kind of inspired a different question. You kind of
Sure.
talked about how, because I feel like for some reason, for me, it's always like different writing on a computer as opposed to something else. Do you prefer writing on your computer or writing like in a notebook, or how does it start for you?
I always make people chuckle when I say that This Is Not a Love Scene, the one that was published with St. Martin's, was written almost 90% of it was written on my cell phone.
Oh, wow.
Like, like thumbs. And people are, how do you do that? How do you not go over it and edit it and all? And for me, that it's very the energy conservation of just using my thumbs is
Mhm.
hard to beat. So I just used my cell phone, and I was very comfortable. So give it a shot. You can write anywhere. You can write on the go.
Very interesting. And in the making of This Is Not a Love Scene, did you come across any challenges trying to break tropes for disabilities and romance novels?
Sure. There's I was gonna say there's lots of them, but there's really not, because there's not a lot of romance novels in general that have people with people that use wheelchairs. So, the only one that I had been aware of was there was a male protagonist in the wheelchair, and spoiler alert, he dies at the end, tragically, inspirationally, everything, all the bells and whistles. And that was not what I wanted to do. And that was something that, after working with my editor, Lauren, she was wonderful at St. Martin's. After all was said and done, we kind of, looked at the project and we said, we really have done something unique, whether or not it's well received, it doesn't really matter. We did something that was original and hadn't been done before for romance and disability. But one thing Lauren said that I just loved is she's like, I love that Maeve is the main character's name. I love that Maeve doesn't die at the end. Like, she had a close call with a medical issue, but this romance is just like one chapter in her life. The love interest even says, I don't think I can be there forever. I think this is kind of just like a passing thing. And she's like, that's fine. I just, I'm good for it now. And it's great that it wasn't this, this sweeping finality, that everything comes down to this romance, and we shall all die, unless we have the romance and all. It's life goes on. This is one experience for Maeve, not the experience for Maeve. And so that was important for me. And of course, just the dialogue it started about sexuality and disability, romance and disability. As far as I know, there's a lot of struggle for people who have disabilities to even convince others that they are interested, they're eligible. And so this is something that really changed that, and it involved, not to be too spoilery, but just the romance and the romance scenes that involved the wheelchair, made it a part of the relationship, brought some physicality to it. I won't go much further, but it's just I think it did good things. I hope it did good things for the community. And but at the end of the day, it's, like I said, it's just one point of view. So maybe there's still stories out there to be told, and I hope that people tell it.
Exactly. And because your story is paving the way for more stories, there's
Yeah.
going to be even more novels and other forms of literature that are hopefully include similar themes that will also lend itself towards making it more acceptable to create those kinds of love stories. I also really loved how it was so refreshingly real compared to most romance books, as you were saying, like with the happy ending and like this love is a forever love, but it wasn't that. It was more like it was very refreshing. And there was also a thread in the book that I also wanted to mention. At times it felt like Maeve was almost uncomfortable being around other disabled characters or befriending them. Do you think it was because she struggled with self-acceptance with her own disability? I was just curious.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a valid point of view, and this could also be a reflection of one of my deep flaws. I certainly struggle with connecting myself with the disabled community, attending conventions and all that. I don't tend to have much interest in doing that because I try to feel as mainstreamed as possible, or I try not to categorize myself, into one community. I think it's funny, some people would be like, they'll come up to me and say, I know someone in a wheelchair, who works at Applebee's in Illinois. Do you know them? No, I don't know them. It's not that small of a world. But I think that there's some room in this answer for breaking your absolutely lovely and flattering perspective of me as being positive and constantly persevering, where I'm not. It's okay to have some angst with your disability too. It's okay to have some anger. It's okay to say, I wish this weren't so. I wish I didn't have this disability. I'm a big admirer of Peter Dinklage and how he approaches his condition as well. He's accepting of it, but he's also aware of it, and he's also sometimes frustrated by it. And I think that that's okay. And so, yeah, it's a it's a disassociation, the difficulty to accept for yourself, and just the desire to just break away and have a sense of abandon about who you are and what your flaws are, what your struggles are, and say, damn it, I'm gonna live my life. I don't need to surround it myself with it. I don't need to make it my whole personality or identity. I'm just gonna go out there and blaze my trail. And that's kind of how I am.
Yes, and even a lot of times in books, writers tend to make the entire character like their disability is their entire personality, and that's not the reality. People have different qualities and quirks, and it doesn't encapsulate who they are like as a person. So definitely having that balance is really important. You also have expressed that you admire authors like C.S. Lewis, John Green, and John Flanagan. How did their stories impact you growing up, and what other books and forms of media are you currently listening to right now?
So C.S. Lewis, I actually like his nonfiction better than his fiction, better than Narnia. So I love his A Grief Observed and his autobiography, Surprised by Joy. I look at him as a spiritual uncle. I don't think he would approve of me and everything that I believe in and do and say, but I think he would understand me, and I think we would have good talks about it, and I think he would love me regardless. So we'd have that connection. John Green, I respect him because he respects his audience. He doesn't write at young adults, he writes to them and for them, and he studies them in a respectful way, in a loving way, their language and their just what they're dealing with. And so I want to be like that. John Flanagan inspired me to love fantasy and to build worlds. He's a great fantasy writer, and he loved me. And when someone who you admire and you consider to be a hero loves you, it really changes, your own perspective of yourself and what you believe in yourself. So the best thing he did for me was love me, and I loved him too. Love him. He's still here. I'm talking like he's not here. Hi, John, if you're there.
Definitely. I also really gravitated towards John Green's work, especially in terms of The Fault in Our Stars and how it really helped to change the narrative on characters with disabilities and all the strides that he made towards that. So I found that very inspirational as well. You travel to underprivileged schools and host writing workshops for children. What is it like working with the next generation of writers?
Oh, that's one of the greatest things I have the privilege of doing. Yeah, I remember going to one school talking about Marwis Mercer, and all the kids had drawn pictures of Mercer or their own dogs. And at the end of my talk, like all of them wanted to line up and show me their pictures, at not all together, like one at a time. And so I did it. I stayed there for an extra half hour and just looked at every single picture. And I had to find something amazing to say about every stick figure of a dog, in crayon. And I was successful. It can be done. So I love to do that. Yeah, I'm so honored to help people, to send the elevator down and help them back up. I teach them that the best way to improve your first story is to write your next story, is to put it aside and to start something new. I teach them, nothing about me teaching them, enough about me teaching them. The best thing you can do is listen to them. And that is like the most you can give anybody, but especially a young person and a young writer. All you need to do is sit there and listen to them read their story. No matter how premature it is, no matter where their skill level is at, let them read it and just be amazed. And that will help them grow their confidence and let them continue to write, because there will be time for them to be criticized. There will be plenty of opportunities for them to be shot down, but I don't have to be the one to do that. I love to just listen and to tell them they're wonderful. They are.
Oh, that's very sweet. I also love with young writers, I feel like they're really fearless in the sense that they aren't as afraid of judgment as older writers. And I feel like the older you get, the more you start to worry about what other people are going to say and what they're going to think about your writing and how it's going to affect you. But I really like that they kind of they don't care about other people's opinions, and it kind of allows for this freedom for them to write whatever they want. And it's really amazing. And also, now with like the technological age, they've grown up with social media. So their style of writing is going to be slightly different than even my style of writing or your style of writing. So it's really interesting to see the differences. And you're also close with the creator of the Hunger Games series, Suzanne Collins. And the experience on the set sparked your interest in TV and film. What kind of insight did you gain from being on that set?
What an experience. I mean, how lucky am I? I got to go on all the sets, most of the red carpet premieres in LA. I learned that everybody has an equal role, whether you're the star, whether you're the guy that tapes down the wire onto the floor. And that was important to know. I learned that connecting with people is not about your status, how many readers you have, how popular you are, but just being able to look at them as a human being, and ask them if they're okay, ask them how their day is. Being able to feel like I was one of the team was such a gift to me. And so I cannot thank them enough and tell them how much they've influenced my life in such a great way. And speaking of listening to people, I mean, Suzanne did that for me. I was struggling with one of my books and she called me up, and we had like an hour and a half phone call for just listening to me and me listening to her, and just the attention is the best gift you can give anybody. So yeah, I think that's what I took away from it. Everybody had an equal role. Everyone mattered there, whether you were Jennifer Lawrence or whether you were me as being a guest. And I have a funny Jennifer Lawrence story that I know she wouldn't mind me telling. I like to brag that I saved Jennifer Lawrence's life. Here's how. Okay.
Oh God.
I went to her trailer to say goodbye to her after the first set visit. And she opened her trailer door and there was a step to get from me to her. And she went to hug me and she fell on me. And so I caught her on my chair and kept her from falling down to the hard asphalt, where she would have certainly broken her skull and perished. And so I like to claim that, I caught Jennifer Lawrence and rescued her. So now people hug me, they vicariously hug Jennifer Lawrence. And maybe Jennifer Lawrence is telling others that if they hug her, they vicariously hug Shane Megale. It could be a thing going on here.
Probably is.
Yeah, right.
How did I know you're going to say Jennifer falls? She falls all the time.
I know, it's the odds were high already.
Yeah.
The odds were in my favor, as they would say.
Oh, the odds were
great. Yeah, there you go.
Yes. Also, even with the prequel is coming out in 2023. There's going to be 3 disabled characters in the franchise: Peter Dinklage, as you mentioned before, Sophia Sanchez, and Knox Gibson. So the representation is going to be amazing, and it's a huge step for the community in the right direction.
That's awesome. I love to hear it.
Yes. And you studied film in college for 2 years. How did that experience help you as a filmmaker and writer?
It gave me practice, it made me learn how to work on a team. I was a director for a first time. It certainly gave me experiences that inspired This Is Not a Love Scene, which the main character is a filmmaker as well. It really just made me, having a disability sometimes makes it difficult to connect with people your own age. People who are older tend to sometimes be more receptive. There's a maturity level maybe, but that was one of the first times where I really felt like I was integrating to my own generation. And so I just had a blast. I just had a lot of fun. And I think you have to have a lot of fun when you're a filmmaker. Otherwise, you're not doing it right, or you're not in the right field.
That's excellent. Also, in terms of having a team, as you were saying before, it's really important. I feel like a lot of people only, when they think of a film or a movie, they only think of the actors, but in reality, there's directors and producers, and there's casting, and there's background actors. So it's a whole team working together as a cohesive unit. And meeting other like-minded people really helps to inspire more stories and more collaboration, which leads to even better stories. So it's a really nice thing to have that under your belt as well. What was it like writing and directing short films and documentaries in the Czech Republic?
Yeah, I went to the Czech Republic in the summer of 2018, and I did a short film that I had written the script for, and I directed. And it was a period piece. It's like the worst thing you could possibly do, because you have to have costumes and you have to have historical accuracy and all sorts of things like that. But we did it, damn it, and it was great. Everyone on my crew spoke Czech except for the assistant director. So I had to translate through him. That was interesting. The Czech are fantastic filmmakers. They take it very seriously. They're great animators too, for what it's worth. And so they really pushed me. They really helped me produce something fantastic. I share that accomplishment with everybody who was on my crew. We won the President's Award at the Film School of Miroslav Andrejsek. I think I said that right. Maybe I didn't, but that was a great honor as well. But being in the Czech Republic was not just a filmmaking experience for me, it was also an experience in independence, because that was the first time I'd ever gone abroad without my parents to care for me. We hired care abroad, and it was a lovely Czech woman who only spoke Czech. And so we used body language and Google Translate while she was showering me and changing my clothes. And I mean, it was just we just connected with or without language. It was amazing.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. Would you ever consider acting one of your own projects in the future?
Sure. I don't know how good I'd be. Maybe I too can fall out of a trailer and win an Oscar. We never know, right? Sure.
You never know what life may hold. But I could totally teach you. Don't worry. I got you.
All right, let's do it.
Yes. And then I also wanted to ask you, you've also led a lot of philanthropic efforts to help with SMA and other afflictions. What are ways that people can educate themselves and to have more an active role in helping disabled people in the community?
So first, it's social. There are things in place that help us, like there are handicap seats at events, but they're not with everybody. They're segregated, like a bunch of FDR statues in a box. We want to be among the people, and so there's social inclusion, and then there's legal and political activism that can be helpful. And I actually can I put something in the chat?
Oh, of course.
All right, cool. I have a little petition that I started, which is advocating to allow people into the military and active duty as a disabled person. And this is one of my dreams. And I've written a whole breakdown of why this makes sense for both disabled people and the military. It would be a merit basis to getting in. You still would have to have a skill that you offer. But I think that warfare is modernizing, and there are so many places for people with disability to serve. And so this is just one example of many. There's travel things that need to happen. People with wheelchairs still can't fly without transferring out of their wheelchair, which is very degrading and very painful for a lot of people with disabilities. So that's another thing. But yeah, check out that petition and check out the Google Doc that's linked there, and you can read what I do in my spare time, which is write 10-page bills for Congress. So how fun. But yeah, so please be socially minded and legally minded both together.
Definitely. And I also feel like having conversations with people directly is also really beneficial. That way, it's easier to understand their experience on a personal level as well. So anyone in the audience, that's definitely a good way of doing that as well. I also wanted to ask you, you're also known for your book, American Boy, which was inspired by your brother that unfortunately passed away in 2017 due to an overdose. What do you think he would say about the book and how you've grown as an author and person today?
Yes, my brother Matt. I try very hard not to make Matt part of my origin story, like saying he died and now I became this, and now he's looking upon me, or I know he'd be disgustingly proud of me because he was just so biased towards me. I can't imagine. He had so many struggles, physically addicted, surrounded by scary people, unsure of his future, and still able to look at me driving for the first time with hand controls and cover his mouth and cry because of how much he loved me and how much he was proud of me while all that was going on. I don't like to say that I'm Spider-Man and he was Uncle Ben. I say that he was Spider-Man and he has his own story. I'm angry that I have lived more life now than my older brother has. I'm 27. He died when he was 26, and I'm living the first year longer on this earth than he ever has. There really is nothing scarier than having someone pass away who that no one in the world will ever love you as much as that person loved you. That's a scary feeling. But I think of him every day. I think I dream of him every night, and I will try to live for him. It's no excuse. It's no trade-off. I love him. May he be remembered through everything I do.
Exactly. His legacy will live on through not just American Boy, but through your work and through the hearts of people that he's touched, your family, your friends, and everybody that is close to you. And again, I'm very, very sorry of that unfortunate passing. And that must have been a really difficult experience for you. But I'm very glad that you've been able to move on and live life to the fullest. And again, all the amazing work that you've been doing in honor of him and for the community is very commendable.
Thank you. Yeah, we that book, I should mention, the proceeds of that go to helping people get treatment for addiction. So he really is saving lives. His story is really saving lives.
Definitely. And in the past, you said that you want to explore more mature, darker material. Are you able to tell us anything about your upcoming projects and do they reflect these new themes?
Every YA writer, every young adult writer is always like, darkness, angst. We need more darkness, and that's it's kind of just a trope, but it's one that works. And I definitely am sincere about that. I do want to explore more dark things. I think I have darkness myself that I want to examine, and that I want to allow people to feel safe to examine for themselves. One project I'm working on that I'm excited about is it's a YA novel. It's going to be hopefully published traditionally, and it's called The Wall Between Us. It's about a matriarchal society where all the men and women are separated by a wall, and the protagonist is a woman, and she has really never seen a man, met a man. But long story short, I won't spoil too much. The men on the other side of the wall, unbeknownst to the woman, are actually protecting them from a demon that hunts women. And the matriarchal society has put the men in charge of protecting them, not told the regular woman, and painted the men as being, barbaric and evil, and that's why they're across the wall. That's why we don't associate with them. But really, the men are protecting the women from this demon. But the twist is that only men can see the demon. Women, they're invisible to women because that's their camouflage, their natural defense. Natural, prey evolution. They're camouflaged to women. And so the main character eventually goes across the wall, and she falls in love with someone who is one of the men there who's protecting the woman from the demon. The men are obviously very angry about this predicament, by the way. They're not doing it out of chivalry or anything. They're being forced to. But the more she falls in love with him, the more she can see the demons through reflections, through mirrors, through sunglasses. And I guess I'll leave it at that. But the demons were definitely a metaphor for me, to darkness in myself, to things I'm going through, to addiction somewhat. But there was this sense that I really want to explore between gender and between, the more you are willing to let someone into your world, the more you can see what they're dealing with. And I won't spoil the ending, but something really happens at the end that allows her to see the demons for good, and tell people, and tell the woman on the other side, we have to help them. Together we have to do something about this. So that's a story that I'm really excited about. It's almost done. I hope that it gets picked up by a traditional publisher. But maybe now you can, if you're out there listening, Penguin, Random House, I am available. Yes, but anyways, I hope I explained that well.
No, that it sounds very, very interesting and very promising. And Tatiana, you also had some questions you wanted to ask Shay as well.
What is some advice you have for somebody that wants to get into writing, and how does that differ from the advice you would give someone who wants to get into the acting industry?
So writing, definitely, like I said to the young kids, the best way to improve your first story is to write your second story. So you really have to not linger on one project. You got to finish things, move on, keep writing. Write from experience. It's funny, my passion is sci-fi and fantasy. And yet the one that got picked up after hundreds of rejections, which, by the way, when I finally got a publishing deal, I had a party where I burned all the rejections in a ritual, and I kept the ashes and I put them in a jar. It was very, very cathartic. But the one that got picked up was the one that I really did not want published. It was too close to my life. I didn't want my parents reading it. I didn't want, all that stuff. But that's the one that struck a chord, because it really, it resonated with what I really knew and what I uniquely experienced. So write what you know. Nothing, how do I say this? Anything worth writing is scary. So if it's scary to write, and it's scary to publish, and it's scary to show people, that's how you know it's worth it. You said acting. I don't really act much myself, but gosh, I mean, my advice would be to try out for the role, whether or not it says disabled person or not. Wheelchair or not. If you're the right actor for it, if you're good at it, show up and give a great read and convince them. Change the part, make it work. I wouldn't put your disability in the forefront at all. In fact, it don't even tell them beforehand that you have a disability. I'm kind of the ask forgiveness, not permission kind of person. So if that helps you get the role, I support that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
I also wanted to ask you, do you have any questions for me?
Yes, I want to know if I've surprised you at all in this interview, and if so, how?
Oh, that's a really good question. First of all, I would love to say it was such an honor meeting you, because I've read so much about you, and I think that you're really, really amazing, and I love all the work that you've been doing. But in terms of surprise, I feel like you're pretty much what I kind of expected. Very, very kind, very knowledgeable, very intelligent, an amazing writer, and has a very unique onset of the world. So I was really, really thankful to meet you.
I'm thankful to meet you too. And I just want to, I want to have my last word be to you and to all the listeners out there, that you are not alone. That if there is something that you need to hear right now about someone caring or loving, I will be that person. I care about you. I love you. I'll be thinking about you tonight, remembering you in my prayers. And I'll drop my website here in the chat as well. And there's a contact form. So if anybody wants to contact me, talk to me about anything, writing, the meaning of life, problems, I got you. Be who you are, be it with abandon, blaze your own trail. And I really appreciate this.
All righty. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it, and hope to talk to you soon.
Take care, everybody. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.